world has taken two separate ways, the traditional and the internet.
Could the ordinary be beautiful? Could the ordinary be a model?
I think that's been proved now, that the ordinary can be beautiful. Isn't that what social media has done?
You'll see, since most companies have lost their spontaneity because everything is edited, posted, and overthought, internet content has taken over, not only with likes, but also bringing back the simplicity of just capturing a moment, making the online world seem more memorable, relatable, and therefore very relevant, since it only takes good lighting and a phone. So, in an era where it's easy to search and get everything with just a click, it makes us wonder how can some industries still exist if we have the same entertainment they offer, and even more for free, on the internet? Well, mainly because there are a lot of people who still buy, let's call it, traditional content, because it promotes their lifestyle, is familiar, or they see the cover as something they aspire to be, as a reflection that you have reached a higher status, and so people just don't care much about social media. But companies have evolved though. I mean, kind of. They use social media now, including not only celebrities, but also people who has an important presence on the internet. But traditional media's formula goes with the most popular on social media, interpreting that followers are equal to acceptance, and therefore it must mean they're in or cool, when actually some people have a lot of followers because they're infamous on the internet and have done and said terrible things just to get attention. They think that bad publicity is still publicity, and there are no consequences of following certain trends or people just for the sake of staying relevant. But they would understand that this could actually affect their reputation negatively down in history, since these brands try to be remembered. Therefore, if you want to have a good legacy in the internet times, you should keep in mind that this means to make a statement and having an opinion, since if you messed up, the internet is forever. But some might argue, for example, but I'm a fashion magazine, I don't do journalism. I focus only on the beauty and complexity of showing someone's personality traits and beliefs through clothes and empowering women.
You don't have to say anything and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, but you should be opinionated and, for example, talk about the direct issues of the fashion industry, such as human trafficking and the fact that some underage models were forced to pose topless.
At the end, it's very contradictory to want to empower all women, but you don't give a voice to the women in your own industry to speak up. And this translates to see female empowerment or inclusion as something that only exists when you want someone to buy something. Speaking of the inclusion of all, there is something very obvious some publications tend to do. In order to display their wokeness, what the cover promotes, it contradicts with its content.
You can clearly see that it's not diverse. A child could see that. Just the mere fact that I'm black and I'm British and I reposted it, it became a headline.
Which shows a false effort to try to evolve, since it's obvious how the company is unwilling to change its content. In conclusion, they use the same diverse influencers or YouTubers to show how not racist they are, or that racism and other forms of discrimination are gone. All of this to avoid not only having to talk about the bad consequences it causes and keeps causing, but also to avoid having to admit their participation in it.
Nobody was wearing fur until Anna put it back on the cover in a Vogue back in the early 90s, and she ignited the entire industry.
Shame on you!
And since most of us have access to social media, on the internet a mass influencer can come from everywhere, and in a way promotes the normalization of inclusion, meaning there's plenty of room for everyone.
Those are models 20 years ago. Everything that they said was filtered through the media and someone who barely knew them. And now I have a direct connection to 15 million people. The control that a woman can have over her own image is really powerful.
But in traditional media, we see a forced inclusion, which is notable because they don't give the same highlight to this internet persona than someone who fits their agenda and keep things light and positive. Someone that talks about problems once they have overcome it, and does the job of selling you things, making the second one part of the family, and that are even usually the result of nepotism. I mean, there's no problem to have 20 pages based on ads, even though it's unaesthetic, or including this problematic celebrity to your platform, also unaesthetic, because you obviously need the money and the hype to keep selling, but you should practice a critical loyalty, which translates to simply asking these brands or personalities that, if they had the opportunity to undo or redo in said problematic situation, would you do it again? So they don't feel attacked, but at the same time it opens a debate and a conversation of why these situations are wrong and why it was perceived as offensive. Also, adding that if you're not so self-absorbed, you could see other people's realities besides yours, and that you should care about them too. Now, the project ends in how the controversy could have been avoided if you only kept yourself informed. And this is what some companies are lacking in content, because they only show one perspective of life, making the content biased and one-sided. I mean, these empires are always respected, feared, and primarily never questioned, again, as the authority figures they represent. But if there's no feedback in the creative process, how do you know if what you're doing is okay? In contrast to social media, where the comment section is the closest we have to a democracy, because it takes not only one person saying it, but also requires several others to agree. So, what could they possibly do to impose themselves again to the masses and try not to go extinct?
Step 1. Self-cancel before the internet does. A big part of the essence of the internet itself is authenticity, and that requires some level of honesty. Therefore, in order for the internet to trust you again, you'll have to call yourself out on your past mistakes, like, why did you work with that photographer if you knew he was a rapist? And the list of problematic scenarios goes on, from cultural appropriation, direct racism, etc., etc. And make sure that what you're preaching is shown on what you're selling. Step 2. Work with people from different backgrounds, sizes, gender, ethnicities, who are not only considered politically correct, but actually have always done the activism they preach, and let them speak their mind on the creative process, making it seem that you are as involved in the matter as they are. Step 3. Give the people in your community a voice, and let them vent about the beauty and ugliness of the industry and how it could be fixed, so it becomes possible to actually fix it. And instead of just apologizing or overlooking the controversy like just hate, make a research on the reason of this reaction and educate yourself on how it could have been avoided.
Always take criticism as a way to do better, not just the internet trolls who are bitter. The idea is not that these companies disappear just because. If not, give them the chance to evolve, because if they don't adapt, they know their extinction is not that far. But now, in order for them to prevail in time, they have to realize that glamour can have a conscience too.
It's not that hard, love. Let the internet upgrade you.